Join us for 3 days in Orlando, Florida in February 2025 for an event designed to equip IT professionals like you with the tools, knowledge, and strategies to navigate the ever-changing cybersecurity landscape. Secure your spot and register to join us for 3 days of immersive learning, collaboration, and skill building with hands-on hacking labs and much more.
It's good to be reminded of all of the threats that we face and the different ways that we're vulnerable.
You're only as strong as your weakest link, right? You can have all the tools that you want in place, but if you're not taking care of the end user, I think that's the weakest link there.
Network with peers from around the globe, share experiences, and learn from real-world case studies, all aimed at enhancing your capabilities as an IT professional. Register now for Zero Trust World 2025 and take the first step towards a more secure tomorrow.
Good morning, everybody. And I was going to say, for those who didn't see the URL on the video there, it is ztw.com you can go to and you can register to get your Zero Trust World tickets. We do have a coupon code, which Spencer will kindly post in the chat for us. It was also on the video there. We're here to talk about Office 365 because, unfortunately, the world of security is not just the endpoint. It also expands beyond the endpoint into cloud services. And one of the increasing attacks we're seeing is attacks on people's Office 365 tenants. And we put our heads together, or Kieran and the team put their heads together to figure out what should you be doing in your Office 365 tenant. Of course, Kieran's going to show you all of the cool stuff ThreatLocker has to help with that. But I think more importantly, we're going to show you what you should be doing, whether you're using ThreatLocker or not. And we're going to do this as a walkthrough. So feel free to log into your Office 365 tenant and make some changes while on the webinar. And hopefully some people can go away a little bit more secure. So Kieran, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And Rob, again.
Morning.
Pineapple Officer t-shirt for Zero Trust World, I see.
We've got a very important question that's been asked by Christopher Walsh, which is, are we crashing drones today?
No crashing drones today. I have another plan for our Pineapple webinar, which I'm not sure when it is, and it doesn't involve a drone. Rob said I wasn't allowed to use drones anymore.
Hopefully, Danny.
But I just want to remind you, Rob, that the drone I crashed, at least we still have it. The drone you crashed at the bottom of the lake.
Well, technically it's within, well, it's not quite within reach, but yeah. Yeah, Christopher also wants to know any tips on how to crash the ones hovering over New Jersey.
Give Rob control.
Yeah, I was going to say, give the controller to one of our marketing people and they'll undoubtedly crash it into something.
Okay. January 14th, apparently the Pineapple webinar is, and we have another way of getting the Pineapple in range without a drone. So I'm told. We have a few different ways we're going to try. Okay, today we're going to talk about Office 365 though. So Office 365 recently released a white paper. Is that available to download now? Do you know, Kieran?
The registrants, whoever's here, they'll get it early, and then everyone else will be getting it shortly.
Okay, and it goes through various different steps of what you should be doing in your Office 365 environment. What would you say number one tip is, or easiest number one tip?
Easiest is just putting your company logo on that login screen. It's super easy to do. It reduces phishing attacks exponentially.
And why does having the company logo reduce phishing attacks? I know the
because, of course, because a lot of phishing attacks are not targeted. So if you just add that company logo, you'll really just get rid of a lot of those untargeted phishing attacks. If your company logo is not on the login screen, clearly it's a phishing attack.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of them. We're going to show a demo of what ThreatLocker can do. Eventually, now we have to reapply for approval, unfortunately. We have approval from Apple to have the ThreatLocker Access app on phones. Unfortunately, we have to change the URL because it was pointing to our dev environment, so they have to reapprove it, but they will reapprove it relatively quickly because it's just a URL change. But basically, you can have...
Danny, anyone who knows me knows it's very difficult for me to say anything bad about Apple, but they're really pushing me with this. they're really trying to make me not like them with the difficulties in getting this approved.
Yeah, apparently the app doesn't do anything. Securing your Office 365 account isn't doing anything. What this app essentially does is it allows you to track your IP address of your employees when they change their IP address, when they reconnect to your networks, so you can update your either Office 365 rules or your ThreatLocker endpoint rules based on this IP address. Unfortunately, it's been a pain to get Apple and Google to approve the app because they don't like the fact they can't do anything from it. So we're going to show you some of that, but I think we'll start off with going through the main points, Kieran. Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you do have questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A. Despite it really, really bothering Rob, we will not be able to get through all of your questions. We will try and answer as many as we can. And but please put them in there. We'll answer some of them in live and some of them in chat. So Kieran, over to you. What do you want to show us?
Awesome. Yeah, let me start sharing my screen here. That ebook that Danny mentioned will be coming out, and that does have more tips, but these are just some quick, simple ones that you can implement today. So like Danny said, if you'd like to follow along, feel free to. Here we're in the admin portal of Microsoft. And if you go down to the bottom for all admin centers, we're going to start with the Microsoft Entra. And I'm going to show you how to do that company branding, like we spoke in the intro, just adding that company branding to your login. So we're now into the Entra admin portal. And from there, we go show more, and then user experiences and company branding. So if you haven't set it up yet, you'll come to this screen where it says getting started. If you have set it up, it'll be on this default sign-in page. So if you're here, you then click edit. And here you want to set the background and you set your icon. The sizes are quite small on what you're allowed to do, so you may have to compress the image a bit to get it to fit, but it'll be worth it. So here I added our logo. Our background image is ThreatLocker. And you go to layout. And you can just set how the layout of the login page is. And then once you're done with that, you click review and save. Make sure everything looks good to you. And then I haven't made any changes, so I can't save, but you'll click save here. Now I'm going to log out and just show you what it looks like.
It's also not a bad idea to add into your training that users should always be looking at the URL, but add into the training that you should expect to see the company logo. And if you don't, double check everything because it means there's something else wrong. The URL being the most important one. But
so now you see here the background. But like Danny was saying, training, number one, make sure everyone understands that they should be looking for this login. There we go, we're logged back in. So super easy. It'll reduce the efficacy of the phishing attacks, and you'll be much more secure with this. So moving on, we'll then go to the All Admin Center again, and we're going to cover Exchange, SharePoint, and Teams. So let's start with Exchange. So for this, we're going to go over some alert policies. You may need some additional licensing for these. If you have E5 licenses, it comes with it. If you have below that, like an E1 or an E3, you may need to have an add-on subscription. But with this, we go to the admin portal for Exchange, then mail flow here, and alert policies. So it does come with 2 native ones. Those are fine without the additional licensing. But if you do want to make a new one, you will need that license. So we click New Alert Policy here. And I'm going to make one that is saying if a cert expires, give us a notification. So cert expiry. The severity I can set as medium. And then you can select, mail loop, slow transport rule, new users forwarding, new domains being forwarded, and cert expiry. You should definitely have a notification set for each of these. It'll just be up to you on who you want to send it to. So here I'm going to have it send to myself.
Now, little pro tip on this, if you're using ThreatLocker Detect, you will automatically ingest these logs from ThreatLocker Detect, and a lot of these rules are already set up in Detect with different scores and thresholds to avoid false positives. The other nice thing is you can create exceptions much easier using ThreatLocker Detect for Office 365. No, it is in beta. It is working with MDR. Feel free to use it, try it out. If you have any feedback, please give it back, send it to us. Send it to your solution engineer, send it to support, and they'll make sure our Detect team and our MDR team get it.
Definitely.
Rob Cole has asked a question, which is business premium licenses, question mark. So they're looking for clarification on the licensing. Is it P2?
So for this alert specifically, if you want to create custom rules, you would need to have Exchange Premium, I believe is the add-on, if you have a P2 license.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
what's the purpose of the cert expiry rule? What cert is we talking about that expires here, Kieran?
I believe it's just your Microsoft cert, the Exchange cert. So the cert for your emails. It's just a good alert to have if it's not super important to know immediately, I would say, but you do want to get an alert so you can fix that if it does expire.
Okay.
But
So somebody's asked, I know you're sending this expiry. Obviously, there's a bunch of rules here. Somebody asked, just very quickly recap, how do you get to the branding page again
yeah,
to logo?
of course. So in the admin portal, this is the just admin.microsoft.com. You go all admin centers. Then you click Microsoft Entra. We're just going to go to that now. So now I'm on Microsoft Entra. This is the Entra admin portal. So it's taking a minute to load, but
Christopher also mentioned you can just search for company branding in Entra.
okay. Yeah, you can search. Otherwise, it is on the left here. You click, oh, it's in my favorites here, but click Show More. And then User Experiences and Company Branding. So under Entra, if you want to find it, if you want, you can search for it. Otherwise, you go Identity, then User Experiences, then Company Branding. And that brings you to the page. Any other questions?
Christopher Walsh said, lol, culture dev.
Is Christopher Walsh Irish? So okay, so a couple of questions. Is this TL detect alerts, or does it take actions on alerts or events? So just like anything in ThreatLocker Detect on the endpoint, you can ingest any Microsoft Office 365 log, graph log, API logs, or Azure logs, and you can create alerts or respond to them. So you could respond to automatically, for example, lock down an account. Please be super careful when you're doing this. Or they can just be sent as an alert to you. Somebody asked another question. Is there any plan to I'm just trying to find it now. I've lost it. Is there any plan to deal with the cloud alerts being cleared? I'm not sure what that means. I think if you're using ThreatLocker MDR, we will clear cloud alerts if we believe that they're a false positive. They're still there in the cleared alerts. I don't know if you're saying you don't want us to clear us and you want your SOC to process them, but I mean, if you talk to your engineer, they can help you with that. They can set up external alerts, create tickets and things like that, call REST APIs, I believe, from Cloud Detect as well. Okay, I'll let you carry on.
Awesome. So you can also here we're on the Microsoft Exchange alert. You can set a daily notification limit. So with the cert expiry, if it happens 10 times in a day, do you want to get alerted 10 times a day, or do you want to just get that one reminder and then you'll look at it when you get a moment? So you can set however many you want your limit to be. So I'll set it as no limit. Go next. And then you just click that create button and it will be there. There is also under that same Microsoft Exchange here, there's mobile device mailbox and access policies. So if you have any managed devices, any managed mobile devices, definitely check these out. Super important, but that's only if you do have some managed mobile devices. So moving on to SharePoint. Oh, are there any questions on that exchange?
I'm just looking through. Do you see anything, Rob?
A few people are questioning, is the cert for Exchange Online not managed by Microsoft?
I was questioning, is this the SSL cert to actually connect, or is this a cert?
I will have to double check on that. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I think it is.
Unless maybe you're using your own domain name. Can you use your own domain name in Microsoft?
I believe you should be able to.
As a server.
I would have to look at that, sorry.
Okay. I think somebody's actually said it's for the on-prem Exchange server data. So I'm assuming that's right, but we haven't validated it.
Yeah, it looks like it's the default self-signed certificate on the Exchange server.
Okay.
So
anonymous attendee has asked, can the alerts be sent to an external email?
yes. Yes. So under this environment, I put my ThreatLocker email. ThreatLocker and this is the two different environments, and I was able to put that there. Under the SharePoint, there are a couple policies that you should do. So how we got there again, under the All Admin Center, you click SharePoint. And then in here we have access control. Sorry. Yeah, we have the access control under policies. So we go policies and access control. You should look at access control and sharing. So here you can use the settings to restrict how users are allowed to access content in SharePoint and OneDrive. So do you want them to be able to allow access from unmanaged devices? If they are timed idle session timeout, do you want to time them out? So after 1 hour, 2 hours, 6 hours a day, whatever you like to set, have them time out. You can also give them notice. Now the network location, this we can also do with some conditional access policies. Those are super powerful, and we'll be going over those later, how you can set those up yourself, and then also how ThreatLocker can help you manage those conditional access policies. Under the sharing, you can also set how permissive. By default, sharing is the most permissive is allowed. So you definitely want to lock this down to as restrictive as possible. If your SharePoint links don't have to go to anyone outside of your organization, don't let them go outside of your organization. So set them to the least permissive.
I have a question on this, Kieran. Can you set this at a user or group level, or is this organization wide?
So this here is set to the group level, but for conditional access, you should be able to then set more granular policies.
Okay. So this is going to set the site, but if we want to set it with conditional access policies, we can do that.
Yep. Yeah, you can say this user, this group, this whatever you'd like is allowed, not allowed, only allowed in this location. Conditional access policies are super powerful. These are just some quick, easy, set across the board policies. Now on to, yep.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now if we go on to the teams, so we're covering the Exchange, SharePoint, and Teams. So this is the Teams one. Under the Teams apps. So these are for like third-party apps inside of Teams. Generally, if you don't need them, you can disable them. So under permission policies, if you click add, you can say for Microsoft apps, allow them. Here you can have an allow list, a block list, and then just block all of them. So there's the Teams App Store. This is for Microsoft apps, for third-party apps, and custom apps. Again, try and be as restrictive as possible. If you don't need third-party apps, disable them.
That is a really big win on that, because having third-party apps could expose access to Teams data and other things depending on the permissions they have.
Yeah, especially custom apps. These are custom apps installed by your users. These should absolutely be either an allow list or just block all. You should not just give all users free reign to add whatever they want to their teams. There's really no reason to allow that. So as we were speaking with conditional access policies, the way to get to them is you go to your Microsoft Entra. So again, on this, under this all admin centers, Microsoft Entra. Then we go to protection here and conditional access. So there are a couple disclaimers to know about conditional access. Is you do have to disable security defaults in order to use conditional access. You can recreate these security defaults using conditional access policies, and that's done through templates. So you just click create new policy from templates. And then you can add all of these that you'd like. Super important to do. You have to secure your environment, so just know that that has to get disabled. And if you're doing anything that blocks access, you really should enable the policy in report only, like you see here, and I'll show you how that can be done. But you want to have it in report only so that in case it would block you from logging in, you get that alert. You don't want to just suddenly start blocking your entire company out and then figure out that something's wrong. Set it report only, leave it a few days, so maybe a week or two, then enable the policy. Any questions so far?
No. So I had a question on the conditional access. Are we going to go into how ThreatLocker can dynamically update those policies, or are we going to do that now, or is that later on in the webinar?
Yeah, I think Rob was going to show the portal and how that works. I was just going to show conditional access, how to set it, and then Rob could show how we can then set the named locations for you.
Now, obviously, the white paper we're going to send out has a lot more suggestions in there. And somebody's asked, they said, I'm assuming the SharePoint and Teams you're going to do are the same things that Microsoft recommends to do in their security portal. We have used some of Microsoft's recommendations. We've also created our own recommendations based on what we've seen in cyber attacks we've seen in the past. Just because Microsoft recommends it too, it doesn't mean it won't break something. And likewise, you have to look at, is it actually fit for your environment? The next thing we want to talk about, the token. Have you got that on your list to discuss? Because I think that's a really important one. Token, yeah, the expiring tokens.
Yes, token persistence. So token persistence, yeah, tokens you don't want to just have forever. You want to expire them after a set amount of time.
I think the default is forever on Office, or certainly a long time.
I believe they're either forever or more than they should be.
And the reason for this, if someone's token gets stolen, it means they can continue to access their email account without having to re-authenticate, without having to read dual factor permanently or until that token expires. So it's really important. Token theft is becoming a massive issue to make sure that you are expiring those tokens. When we turned it on in ThreatLocker, it really annoyed a lot of people, but it meant they had to log in every day into their email rather than it being left open forever.
Yeah, definitely good. They'll bypass multi-factor. Even if you have multi-factor authentication, that token says that you've already verified it, so it's super important to expire those. So for a conditional access policy, we can hit new policy, then set it to whatever you'd like. So just test. And here is where you will usually want to have a break glass emergency account that you exclude. So this would be one. So in case you do have a policy that locks everyone out, you have a break glass account that can still access stuff, but you'll want to also set alerts for when that account gets logged into. So you'd hit exclude, and then users and groups, and then just pick the user. Then we go to the target resources, and we would set this to device platforms and all resources here. And then there we go. And then we go to the conditions and device platforms here. Configure yes, and we'll say any device. Done. Right. Then under grant, we want to grant access if the device is marked as compliant. So again, it does give you a warning. Don't lock yourself out. Make sure that your device is compliant. And again, enable it. You'll see it here at the bottom. Enable policy report only. This is super, super, super important. Do not lock yourself out of your tenant.
So you're able to put this on report only. This is equivalent to a set, essentially ThreatLocker's monitoring only mode. And you can now go back in and see all of the alerts on this somewhere. Where can we see those alerts?
I will show in a moment. So then session here, we can have you set your hours. So you can set the sign-in frequency. So this is the token persistence where you say if they're trying to access a resource, how often do they have to re-authenticate? Here's where you set the 1, 2, 3, whatever, and then you set it to hours or days. So you can say 1 day, so that means every day they'll have to re-authenticate. And then persistent browser session, you do not want to have that because you do not want to have a you so set that to never persistent because you do not want to have a persistent browser session. You want to expire that token. You want users to have to re-authenticate. Here, we'll just set this to include all users. And I'll just set it to exclude the user. Like I said, have that break loss account. Don't lock yourself out. Select users must exclude. So I have to exclude myself.
Just while he's doing that, Christopher Walsh made a very good suggestion, which is we are building a conditional access policy, which when enabled will flush all tokens and also lock everyone out of the portals. It came out of a tabletop exercise for ransomware when someone questioned how to protect against access to cloud data. So that's probably not a bad suggestion.
Definitely. So with this, then you can go over here to the audit logs. And this is where you can see the different policies. This is where the report only will come in. You want to go through your logs, make sure everything looks good. So for the conditional access, like we've mentioned, you can set the logins so that they can only access certain resources depending on their named locations. So basically,
let's talk about named locations for the moment. So essentially, a named location is a list of IP addresses, networks. We can do countries. Can you in that, or is it just IP addresses and networks?
There's geographic limits. I'm not sure if that's country's location. Yep.
So you can add IP ranges. You can add countries in there. So it's a good idea, even if you're not using ThreatLocker, to go and add. I only allow logins from the US if your employees are only in the US, or the UK if they're only in the UK, and make exceptions as needs be. So if someone does steal your token, they won't be able to access your resources from outside the country.
Should we mention storage control policies, Danny? The community storage control policies for blocking cookie access.
We probably should do that, and I'll let you. We'll move on to that once we.
Brad has asked that question. He said we've seen a lot of token theft lately and haven't really found a good way to prevent it.
Well, and there's two ways that someone can steal it. Well, there's a few ways. There's probably more than 2 ways someone can steal a token, but 2 common ways are: one is malware runs on the endpoint of some description, or they use a tool like PowerShell to gain access to the token. So you log in, you've got malicious software on there, that token is now stolen and uploaded. The other way is they give you a fake page, you put your credentials in, you put your OTC code in, and then they extract the token from the middle. So in this case, there's a few different ways we can stop it. Well, the first thing, you can't necessarily stop the token always being stolen if someone puts their credentials in the website, but you can stop it being effective. So one of the nice things about named locations is we can go in and say only certain IP addresses can access their email or their Office 365 login. So for example, if you were only Office-based and you had one office, you could say, just my Office IP address can access it. If someone steals a token, it's going to be essentially useless to them because only the Office IP address can access it. What ThreatLocker allows you to do as well is actually update those name locations. So the name locations are a list of IP addresses, and ThreatLocker allows you to update them in real time based on the IP addresses of your devices. So when your user goes home and plugs their laptop in, it will check into ThreatLocker. ThreatLocker will tell Microsoft, hey, we've got a new name IP address for this name location. It'll update it in real time. If you have your phone connect to a new network, it will do the same thing with the ThreatLocker Access app. So, and maybe this is, have you got any more you want to show, or is this a good segue for Rob to start showing how you do that in ThreatLocker?
Yeah, so just last thing is for the name locations, you can also set where you could say they can access their email and these specific SharePoint folders only at the work, and then so have that name location, and then we'll dynamically add the so that every other SharePoint page, the not super secure or the not super sensitive, we can then update and they can access as they're traveling or at home or whatever. But yeah, absolutely, if Rob wants to take it away.
Yeah. So you can actually say, hey, these are work locations. So you could say, I have a name location of the Office IP address, and the Office IP address can be the only people that can access sensitive data, but the email can be accessed by your phones and other data. And of course, you could set that as a global. We're going to allow the whole world, or we're going to allow the whole of the US. Of course, if someone's using the US, it's going to be very easy to get around that because attackers will have servers in the US. If you're in a small country that attackers don't tend to have servers, it gives you a bit more protection if you're in the US. But you could also say just my trusted IP addresses and then update them based on the ThreatLocker Access app. Do you want to show us what that looks like beginning to end, Rob? How you deploy that?
Yeah, it's really straightforward. We'll just mention to prevent against on-device cookie theft. Guys come up with some really good storage control policies. Basically, pretty much the same as everything else we do, which is deny by default, permit by exception. So you got one policy which is to block access or block everything from accessing cookie storage locations, and then you can add specific ones for a specific browser. So you're saying block everything from accessing my Edge cookie storage location, but only allow Microsoft Edge to access that location. So if anyone's looking for them, they're in the community, just search for cookie, you'll find those policies.
And that's really useful, not just for Office 365 tokens, but any cookies from your machine could be, someone could browse your cookies and copy them. The
guys came up with an incredibly useful POC of this, and I mean it was literally about 15 lines of Python basically just to steal the cookies, pop it out onto another machine, and you're effectively in and away.
And not just Office, but any account essentially that you've got.
They did it with GitHub, so yes, anything.
Actually, on that, you'll notice on the ThreatLocker login page, there's a slider that says use enhanced token theft protection. It has caused some people some problems. What that does is that basically says if someone copies your ThreatLocker cookie, they won't be able to use it on an IP address that's different to yours. So it can cause problems if you're connecting via VPN and your IP is constantly changing because the cookie will get wiped out and it'll make you re-authenticate. But if you're on a normal network, it's very, very effective. It means if someone did copy the token, they wouldn't be able to log in. Okay.
The ThreatLocker Access stuff, I mean, it's not available to everybody right now, as Danny mentioned, Apple and Google and their approval process. But basically, it's in the computers page. You'll have an access button in the top right-hand corner. You can then invite people to it. So basically, you add them to whatever group that you want. You can send the link and instructions by SMS or by email, pop in a phone number, pop in an email address, and send it from there. Once you've done that, once they've downloaded the ThreatLocker Access app, which you showed everybody a moment ago, it will basically just start logging check-ins from that device. So I can see, in this case, I've got push enabled true, geolocation enabled, motion enabled, IP address, longitude, latitude. Obviously, the most relevant part of this is the IP address because that's what you want to open to Office 365. So
I believe on the Apple device, if you don't enable location services, it will continue to work fine unless you set, in the future, we're going to allow physical geolocation policies. But if you, on the Android, you're required to enable geolocation services in order to get it to check in if it goes offline. So with iPhone, the phone gets turned off, we're going to send a push. So as soon as that phone gets turned back on, we're going to send a push, which is then going to reactivate the ThreatLocker Access app. On Android, we have to use the geolocation service to actually force it to reopen the app if you restart your phone, or the user would have to reopen the app manually themselves.
Again, Danny, Apple, it just works.
Yeah, you didn't go through the critical parts of that. So, but the geolocation is nice as well, because we will be able to use it in future for other things, like is the user physically in the location that they claim to be, because it's going to be on their device.
Yeah, and obviously with ordinary machines, we do have the IP addresses that the devices are checking in from. So this is specifically to mobile devices. With ordinary machines, we already know what device or what IP address you're checking in from.
Okay, and then once they set it up, how do we set? If you got the name location, you can show them how to set that up in ThreatLocker as well.
No.
Is it not on the network control?
Is it? I don't.
Kieran, do you have it?
No, I don't have the ThreatLocker updating it.
Let me just pull it up. I'm gonna see if I can pull it up. The app's basically been resubmitted to Apple and Android to get reapproved. Once it's reapproved with our URLs, it shouldn't be as long as it was before, because all we've done is change our API URLs from our dev environment to our live environment. You'll be able to go in under network control. You'll be able to create those name locations directly in Office 365, and you basically assign them to any policy you want in Office 365, and it will update them within a minute. So if you go home, you connect your home Wi-Fi, it'll say Danny's now on this IP address. If you're in the office, it will say you're now on that IP address, and it'll allow you access to your account from that IP address. Which is really nice. And then if somebody steals your token, it will be useless unless they're on one of your IP addresses. So, although not sure why that's disappeared from the portal. Okay, so let's see if we got any other questions.
Christopher is full of questions today. That may be an issue if you're using a web proxy that has many subnets that browsing sessions are coming from. Thoughts? Question mark.
So that may be an issue if what?
I don't know if he's talking about the token theft protection on the login page.
Read the question again.
That may be an issue if you're using a web proxy that has many subnets that browsing sessions are coming from.
Oh, maybe that. Yeah, if you do have your IP address chaining, you have to slide that off. It's not perfect. Nothing post networks. It works perfect. It works fine. Also, somebody asked, would TL protect, Chris Walsh asked, would TL protect that code running to steal the token on the machine? And the answer is yes, it would. This just gives you an extra layer of protection if you didn't have that, or someone accidentally allowed something that they shouldn't have done.
Will access work with ThreatLocker network control? Would be great for networks where mobile devices need to access local resources. Actually, that's a good point.
It will work.
Okay.
It will work for network control. So you'll be able to use the mobile to update your IP address as well as the endpoint. So if you have let's just say this, don't do it, please, an RDP server on the internet, and you close the port down based on the ThreatLocker dynamic ACL policy, it will open the port when your phone connects to a network. So you'll be able to connect to it from there. Please don't use RDP. If you want to use a Citrix server through a Citrix gateway or an RD gateway, that's fine, as long as it's got dual factor. But when you open RDP on the internet, bad things start to happen, even if you've got it locked down because somebody turns off a policy and forgets it's there, and it's a big pain.
Stephen has asked a question, which I think we've already answered with the Access app, which is how can you whitelist IP addresses? Keeping up with them would be a nightmare.
And I'll just rephrase it. So essentially what happens is you have ThreatLocker on your computer, you have ThreatLocker on your phone. If any of those devices come in, it's just going to update those IP addresses and name locations within a minute of those devices coming online. So you don't have to manually whitelist them. And then when the device goes offline, it's no longer being used, it will remove it, or if it changes its IP address. Somebody's asked on geo-blocking name locations. So with Office 365, we ran into issues where the countries are not known, or I guess wrongly listed. If you're in Chicago, it might say you're in Canada if it gets too close to the border or something. It's not very often, but it does happen. So your IP address is not up to date in the database. It says it's the wrong geolocation. That's not impossible on Office 365 name locations. It doesn't happen very often. And in most cases, you can get away with just doing exceptions.
What feature needs to be turned on to track logins for the devices? That's
in Office 365?
Well, I presume it's just asking about access in general. I mean, it's network control.
Oh, it was about network control.
Yeah, what feature needs to be turned on in ThreatLocker, presumably, to track logins for the devices?
You can use detect will track logins for the devices. You can create a detect policy to report any login. and there's policies in the community there immediately. I think we actually log them automatically.
David Barnes, not strictly Microsoft 365, but any recommendations on how to use network ring fencing on Office applications? Do not realize how many millions of IP addresses there are. Nightmare! Exclamation mark.
Well, Office 365 should have a built-in
There is
definition.
built-in for Office 365. There's a built-in for Microsoft as well.
Yeah, but also just make sure you have. There's a feature in ThreatLocker called domain name parsing. You have to turn it on as an option. You can find a knowledge-based article for it, and what it does, it allows you to use the domain name rather than the IP address. Now, there is a caveat to that, which is domain name parsing has been known in the past. There are no outstanding issues, as far as I'm aware, to cause problems with some really old third-party weird applications. So if you do turn on domain name parsing and you've got a strange application that starts behaving strangely, then it might be related to that. But domain name parsing allows you to parse the domain name. So when you do ring fencing of Office or any application, you can just put the domain name in, which makes it a lot easier than knowing all of the IP addresses. Somebody asked how we compare settings to benchmark. I don't know if we mentioned CIS in there. Have we, Kieran? In the white paper, it's going to be sent out, but generally speaking, ThreatLocker in general benchmarks very well against CIS, because CIS does have controls like application whitelisting, application control to limit network access with our ring fencing, network controls, firewalls, things like that. So I don't know if we've mapped exactly the Office 365 one, but it's going to compare relatively well in those features. And
that's a good question. Would session hijacking bypass conditional access policies that require devices to be domain joined?
So I don't know if I've tested that, but my understanding is the authentication validates a device on the token theft on the creation of the token. So I believe the conditional access policy would be different because that's checking the IP address at that point. But I believe if you were to steal a token and take it to another device, it would still be usable. Kieran, do you have any insights? Have we tested that?
I don't believe so, but we can definitely do some testing.
There's one for the threat intelligence team to test and validate, Rob. Somebody's asked a question, is it possible to have, if a device is in the office, authentication can be set to a week versus externally to 1 day? Is that possible? I should assume you can have a different conditional access policy based on IP address.
Yeah, you should be able to. That's the thing with conditional access is, you can really get granular with it. So you just set a policy for if they're on this named location, being your work, this is the persistence, so you can set it to a week. And then you do another policy then if they're on any of these named locations, this is the timeout policy.
Okay, so somebody asked about token theft. The best way to stop token theft, and there's two things ThreatLocker can help you with Office 365, are ThreatLocker Detect, which will go through the known indicators of compromise, so-called impossible logins. I've managed to trip that like 15 times in the last 2 months, but I seem to travel really, really fast. So, impossible logins, rule creation alerts, things like that, which will notify you of suspicious behavior. It's not going to stop a token being stolen. It's just going to make it us know and potentially lock out the account faster. So if you haven't set up ThreatLocker Detect, please do so. Also, please make sure you've configured the integration. The biggest problem we have is someone who's gone and got ThreatLocker Detect, bought Unified, hasn't configured the integration. We do not charge more for Office 365 if you have ThreatLocker Unified. It's all included. The Access app is included. The Detect is included for Office 365, but you do have to add that integration into Office, so make sure you've done that, and then we can respond. However, the thing that is most important is not the alerts, because when you're getting an alert, your mailbox has already been compromised. Somebody's already in there deleting files, copying data, sending spear phishing emails. The best thing you can do is create conditional access policy so only your IP addresses can access your Office 365 tenant, and general your servers as well with ThreatLocker Network Control, and then update those name locations or update those ACLs using the ThreatLocker Access app. I know it will be available very soon, or the ThreatLocker endpoint on your laptop. So really, really important. That is going to be far more effective than Detect. Detect is important because that's what tells you messed up and forgot to configure something right. So make sure you do configure both of those in your environment. Do you want to quickly show the Detect for Cloud, Rob? Are you in a position to do that?
That's a really good question. I can certainly try.
And conditional access, I have a question here. Does conditional access policies work for Azure file servers as well? File shares. Azure file shares. Is that SharePoint or are we talking about something else? Kieran, do you have any insights on that?
If it's part of your M365 tenant, it should be controllable like that. I'm not quite, if it's an Azure resource, you should be able to limit it.
The only exception would be if you've got like a Windows server installed in Azure.
Yeah.
That would be different. But in those cases, ThreatLocker network control on the endpoint will actually update the ACL automatically. Okay.
So your question, Danny, about cloud detect. So first step is obviously to set up that integration, which you do from here. You just search for Office 365. Obviously, my one's been configured already. Second step is we have a bunch of policies already to go in the community. So if you just go to community within the portal, go to cloud detect, you will see, I think there's 58 of them currently that basically you can just apply to your environment. So you just click on the policy, click on download. That's now effectively been applied to your environment.
And I'm right in saying not all of those, but the most critical ones are automatically added.
Correct.
As a master policy, if you like.
Yes, exactly. So then basically when something happens, you can effectively get notification on it. I mean, this is particularly important with people who deal with multiple Office 365 tenancies. As ex-MSP, this is something I'm acutely aware of, which is it's not too bad if you just got one tenancy you're looking at alerts. If you've got 50 or 100 or 200 or 500 environments that you're managing, it's basically unmanageable. So with this, basically, we get notifications when things happen. So things like creating forwarding rules, etc. And you can basically look at it in the context of other alerts that may have happened for that same account. So, you know, maybe one thing alone isn't suspicious or indicative of compromise, but if 3 or 4 different things happen in a particular device or particular account, rather, that would be something to look into. But as I said, things like logging in via anonymous IP addresses or Tor, forwarding rules, all that kind of stuff is baked in.
And then you can lock that account, or if you're using ThreatLocker MDR, we'll respond according to your runbook as well.
Correct. I wonder what would happen if I locked SP1 at culturedev.com. Let's find out.
I'm guessing it locks the account.
Well, yes, true. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's really straightforward. As I said, you start with setting up the integration. You have those master policies already, and then you can add any other ones that you want.
And what's nice is those exceptions, because I was getting alerts every day saying this rule was created, this rule was created, and it was always the same rule that we use in ThreatLocker, and it was annoying me. But with ThreatLocker Detect, we can go in and create those exceptions. If the rule is forward to this email address, then ignore it.
Stephen's asking the very important question. Did Danny and Rob actually paint the ThreatLocker logo on their walls, or is it just a really good virtual background?
No, it's a metal. It's not painted.
It's not even painted. It's proper metal.
Proper metal.
I had to fight for that. I had to fight to get that logo. But yes.
In other words, you had to ask for it.
Yeah.
So, yes, but we do have the ThreatLocker logo on our wall, and it's metal. It's not as cool as the ones they have in Dublin. They're 3D. They like come out from the wall.
They've got better ones than we have.
Yes. Okay, so we're nearly up time. Just a reminder, we always
one other question.
Email the.
Sorry, one other question. Peter has asked, "What is the ThreatLocker store? Everything is grayed out on that screen for me, and I've always wondered."
Oh, so it's
sorry, I know what it is.
Don't enable it yet. It's supposed to only be showing in beta, and it was logged to remove from live yesterday. The ThreatLocker store allows you to give your users alternative options to apps. So when they download QPDF and you don't like QPDF, it will say QPDF is blocked, but you're allowed to run this Adobe PDF, or whatever you choose as permitted policies, and it will give them options with download instructions. It's going to be released in the next few weeks. So it's very exciting. It means if you've got 5,000 or 10,000 users and you don't want them to call saying, well, I need a PDF reader, I need a browser, I need this, it will actually, when they try and do something bad, it'll pop up. They can go in, they can self-subscribe, they can even self-elevate if you've allowed the application to do it to self-install. So it's really cool, but it's still in beta. You can access it from the beta URL. One of the features is that disable button isn't very obvious. If you actually hit the enable button, it will actually let you do something. It's not grayed out. So the button's called disabled, and then when you click on it, it changes it to enabled, but that's changing because that was one of the feedback from the beta that the button is not obvious. I would recommend you wait until it goes live or until we at least push it into a major beta, because we're still working through issues with it. For example, right now it shows you the policies you have permitted, which we don't want it to do. We want to show policies that you've put into the store as acceptable.
Some people are very excited about that. So Craig Moore has said, OMG, I can't wait for that store. When, gimme.
Okay. So if you have,
Right.
we are running low on Zero Trust World passes. I know Heather's been trying to get more space, but if you are interested in going to Zero Trust World, please book your ticket at ztw.com. If you haven't registered, we are running low on tickets. I know Heather's trying to get more space, but if you go to ztw.com, it really is a good 3 days. It's very hands-on, very learning, rubber duckies, pineapples, how to harden, real labs. This year, we're going to run labs later into the evening so people get more access to it too. And it's going to be even better than it was last year. So Rob, Kieran, once again, thank you. And we look forward to our next webinar, which is January 14th. And we get to figure out, or Rob gets to figure out as our Chief Pineapple Officer, how to steal Wi-Fi credentials using a Pineapple, no drones allowed. I'm coming up with something really cool there. So look forward to seeing everyone.
You're coming up with something really cool. As long as you get the goddamn thing to work, it is. Off you go.
Oh, you're doing the pineapple. You're doing the pineapple part. I'm just getting it within range. Guys, thank you very much. Please, if you are using ThreatLocker, make sure that you block RDP, enable network control, turn on dynamic ACLs before you go home for the holidays, because we get more customers get remote encryption, have RDP open because they didn't enable network control, have machines in monitor-only mode, get ransomware every year than any other time of the year. So please make sure you turn those features on. If you haven't got them turned on and you need help, just schedule a call with your solution engineer, ask your account manager. If you don't know who your solution engineer is, go to help, get help from a cyber hero. They can walk you through it, or they can schedule the call for you. It really is important. There's nothing I hate more than seeing someone get ransomware who's paid for a product to stop it because it's not turned on and configured properly. So make sure you've enabled network access control with dynamic ACLs. Make sure you're blocking RDP ports. Make sure you're blocking SMB ports except from trusted devices, and make sure you've secured your environment. Of course, it happens every weekend. The holiday weekend is the worst time to get hit by ransomware. Plus, it destroys your Christmas, your New Year, and everything else. So please do that. Wish everyone a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holidays, and thank you again, guys.
Thank you.